Hello. I'll be reading from a paper entitled Preservation Begins at Creation, Integrating an Embedded Digital Archivist Within an Academic Media Art Program. Now, I'll preface it by saying that I submitted the paper while I was the Digital Scholarship and Archiving Librarian at the University of Windsor, but with the events of COVID-19, pandemic, and the subsequent transition to online learning by Canadian universities, I've since taken on a new role in educational development to support those efforts at another institution. So this paper reflects a snapshot from the beginnings of a project that was ultimately not able to move out of the hypothetical phase. So one of the key insights from the multi-year international research on permanent authentic records in electronic systems, or InterPares project, was the observation that preservation begins at creation. That is, in order to preserve authentic, accurate, and reliable digital records for long-term access and use, it's important for record preservers to work together with creators of records to consider what preservation actions should be taken from the outset. Many media artists, however, are unlikely to be practicing in contexts with trained records managers or archivists as colleagues. Indeed, media artists must often act as stewards of their own records until they enter the custody of an art museum or gallery, if they do. The importance then of developing the capacity of media artists to preserve the works they create, such as determining what file formats are deemed to be archival, how often to refresh digital files, what metadata ought to be captured, and so on, cannot be overstated. Now, much of the existing literature regarding the preservation of media art can be characterized as theoretical guidance related to the work of conservators and curators, informed by the more reactive stance of a conservation paradigm. Falcao and some of the Tate Gallery highlight the conceptual and technological contributions of digital preservation to the field of digital art conservation, but don't make specific reference to collaborations between conservators and creators of media artwork at the point of their creation. A coordinated strategy aimed at establishing the research infrastructure required to support the long-term preservation of works of media art and other records of media artists' practice must therefore build upon the art conservation approach, which is more like remediating damage after it's occurred, with the objective of minimizing or preventing even the degradation, which is presupposed by a digital preservation approach. Now, one possible means towards achieving the latter is by embedding a digital archivist within an academic media art program. Embedded librarianship embedded librarianship in an academic institution implies an integrated and collaborative presence within teaching, learning, and research activities, rather than requiring users to seek out library services. It frequently, though not always, involves an instructional component as an extension of the literacy promotion facet of the librarian's role. An embedded librarian may work closely with a faculty member on the design of a research assignment or offer reference help directly within an online course, for example. The aim of embedded librarianship is to provide better access to library resources by reaching out to user communities, reflecting a larger shift in the library profession towards a more user-centric service orientation. Archivists within academic institutions have also begun to explore the possibilities afforded by an embedded role. Case studies documenting the experiences of embedded archivists suggest that, to date, the emphasis in these collaborations has been on the use of primary sources and supporting the development of learners' archival research skills. That is, instructional activities that are grounded in the assumption that students are users of archives, and also sort of more traditional notions of sort of tangible archives more than digital. Now, another significant area in which an embedded archivist could contribute is in teaching students digital preservation practices, with the acknowledge that they're also creators of archives. Extending that early intervention logic implied by preservation begins at creation to the record creators themselves, students in media art programs stand to gain the necessary competencies to preserve their works at the beginning stages of their practice through tailored instruction and other discipline-specific support provided by an embedded digital archivist. Digital archivists in academic settings and elsewhere perform a wide range of duties related to preserving and providing access to born digital archives, or those archives created within a digital environment, so as opposed to physical documents that have been digitized. They often work with a variety of digital objects, so audiovisual media, websites, software, databases, and so on, equipping digital archivists with both the conceptual and the methodological expertise to enrich media arts students' understanding of the preservation requirements for the media they create with. The technical nature of digital archivists' work, however, may lead to fewer opportunities for them to interact with students in a public service or instructional capacity. They're kind of tucked away in their offices. Academic digital archivists seeking to embed themselves within their institution's media art program, then, may need to actually actively advocate for the importance of establishing the role. So early in the winter 2020 academic term, I began the relationship building process with faculty members in the University of Windsor's School of Creative Arts, or SOCA. Now, although an academic media art may derive a considerable benefit from the support of an embedded digital archivist, it's also necessary to recognize the additional labor involved for the faculty partners, right, to accommodate the archivist within their teaching and learning activities, and the time it takes to build the trust central to any collaboration. So having myself trained as a media artist, and in fact graduated from the school's fine arts program, allowed me to quickly establish a rapport with the SOCA media art faculty. Nonetheless, planning in winter 2020 was approached with the objective of instituting the embedded digital archivist role in the fall 2020 term, which kind of explains why it didn't happen. But potential activities of interest to faculty included developing digital archiving and preservation workshops for specific disciplinary areas like digital photography, providing individual consultations to media art students, participating on panels of guest speakers, and advising on the preservation of master's theses. So initial discussions with the SOCA faculty also surfaced a pivotal insight, which is while media artists can conceptualize the complex preservation challenges associated with their work, communicating the urgency of performing preservation actions early in the work's life cycle and the artist's responsibility in effecting them would foreseeably be a core function of the embedded digital archivist role. That is, one of the most significant barriers to promoting digital preservation competencies among media arts students may be attitudinal. An interview with artist Robert Kwoagi, when asked when he thought his audio installation works would age, is illustrative. So this is a quote from him. "I don't really know what destiny the things I'm doing will have. Aging ceases to be acceptable only when the work begins to be objectively compromised. Intervening becomes necessary when the work's functioning starts to be compromised." Now, the question itself was framed from a conservation perspective. Kwogi's response it nonetheless suggests that media artists and students of media art may not act to preserve their work until there are appreciable signs of degradation or loss, or too late, basically. And indeed, some artists may welcome or invite technological obsolescence as an intrinsic feature of the work. But for media art students intending for their work to endure, they may be motivated to perform a feasible set of preservation actions early on, when gradually introduced and reinforced through interactions with an embedded digital archivist. Now, developing the requisite skills and knowledge to preserve one's body of work is particularly difficult for media artists. It's telling that the second phase of the Inter Pares project focused heavily on the preservation of artworks, noting the challenges posed by the diversity of record outputs in creative fields. A one-time workshop teaching the basics of personal digital archives is likely to be inadequate in preparing media artists to preserve the variety of formats they'll work with over their lifetime. So to address the specific concerns related to preserving media art, then, the personalized and sustained instruction enabled by embedding a digital archivist within an academic media art program suggests a more fitting approach. Providing media art students with a foundational grasp of digital preservation not only has the potential to facilitate the subsequent work of media art conservators, it also reciprocally promises, through collaboration with students and faculty practicing in a range of media, to advance the digital archivist's own understanding of their practice, which can be shared with the media art preservation and conservation community. So, thank you.
I'm very honored to present my research in the Summit on New Media Art Archiving event at IZEA 2020. I am Byeongwon Ha, an artist and an art historian in the field of new media art. Based on my experience in that field, I would like to talk about archiving interactive art for art practitioners and theorists. My study on interactive art archiving began with a very fundamental question. How can readers see and understand this complicated art, which is intertwined between art and technology? Before talking about those topics, I would like to clarify some keywords for my presentation. First, interactive art in my research is limited to computer-aided interactive art. It means that interactive art here does not incorporate Roy Ascot's changing painting, although it was pioneering work in the field of interactive art. Second, art practitioners include artists and their collaborators or engineers as creators. Next, art theorists refer to curators as well as scholars and critics. Finally, this research is an initial development for interactive art archiving. It is very open to any feedback from the public. As the VR market is increasing in demand, VR experiences for museums are getting more accessible, specifically during the age of COVID-19. For example, we can virtually visit the Smithsonian American Art Museum. We can find positive feedback from the virtual visits. However, it has some issues due to imperfect interactive interface and limited capacities spaces. This tells that the VR environment for museums still stay in the very beginning point. Let's take a look at Mona Lisa Beyond the Glass, the VR project by Louvre Museum in collaboration with HTC. I confess that I did not see real Mona Lisa in Paris. However, after visiting the virtual space with Oculus Quest, it seemed like I have been to Louvre. Beyond seeing Mona Lisa, the painting was expanded with descriptive voices and images which helped me understand the painting better. It is a kind of a museum audiovisual guide for Mona Lisa. I think that it can be valid for painting and some visual art. Those virtual environments themselves can be main archiving elements due to their simulation quality. However, virtual reality interface depends on visual experiences. Interactive art needs physical participation from the audience. It mainly provides real tangible interfaces or invisible sense-based interfaces. VR cannot transfer its realness. beyond its visual image. Instead, with limited senses, this immersive device can make more manipulations and exaggerations of interactive art. To reduce them, I suggest three classic elements: concept, technology, and phenomenology. Adolf Schenken insists a significant relationship between conceptual art and new media art. As a part of new media art, interactive art could be very conceptual with a kind of software quality. We can insist that interactive art derived from text-based art and instruction-based art. At the same time, to run the software, interactive art needs specific hardware such as Kinect, Arduino, proximity sensor, and Oculus. In my research, I would like to talk about concept as a main idea for interactive art. To understand a main concept for interactive art, we need to figure out the flow of technology. What if the abstract for interactive art writing is like the Dyson vacuum machine manual? It does not have too many texts. With the simple diagrams, we can figure out how it works. This diagram is a little bit different from floor plan for interactive art. It shows how core parts work and how each part relates to others. The concept is intertwined with technology in interactive art. What kind of technology did this project use? More correct, precise, and well-organized technological information on interactive art can save time to install or reinstall interactive art. For example, when I reinstalled my project in 2018 due to a security issue, I found that a specific object did not work anymore on the latest Mac OS. And I Googled it for a long time to solve this issue. Finally, I found a replacement object with that. If we have a more precise archiving system for technology, we can save time a lot. If the technology is not credentialed for their art projects, they can share the technology with new media art communities to adopt, develop, or update their technological parts based on open sources or Creative Commons. Moreover, the precise and open information can contribute to establishing a sustainable installation and reservation system for museum and gallery. As you can see in montage theory, by using editing techniques, filmmakers can easily manipulate the audience's interpretations. Long take, long shot dramatically can reduce those manipulations. They can also reduce the audience's visual-centric appreciations, as phenomenological architects insist. Sometimes I feel like I was deceived with manipulated video clips about interactive art projects. I want to see a long take, long shot documentation without any cuts to see its real-time performance. I would like to continue to study on interactive art archiving methods to give artists and theorists more precise and dense information. My future goals are, by using those three approaches, concept, technology, and phenomenology, making three visual outcomes. First, artists in interactive art document their projects with well-organized archiving templates. To make those well-organized archiving templates in-depth interviews with artists in interactive art should be conducted. Next, contemporaries viewers fully understand how interactive art works in not only a conceptual but also a technological way from those documents. Finally, interactive art exhibitions in conferences, festivals, and museums, galleries utilize those documents for maintaining their archiving system or installing, reinstalling, reserving interactive art projects. Thank you for having me this event today. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Rem, you're on.
Okay, yeah, now I see you. I didn't before. I only saw myself and I didn't feel like talking to myself. Okay, those were the last two short presentations of today before we go into the plenary session. I found these very interesting presentations, two of the best of the day, I would say. Of course, mainly because you're in my session. No, seriously. I asked for questions to come in, and now the first question comes in. Maybe Bonnie can have a look at that and pose the question. But I have a few questions myself. First one for Devon, because she started. I'm rather impressed with the way you approach the long-term way we have to address the problem of electronic art archiving. At the same time, it is a long road that you propose, because you want us to start at education, and then once we have educated the right people, then we can start doing the right way of archiving. And that doesn't really solve the current problems Bonnie and me are having, for example, with the IZEA archives, trying to archive things that happened in the past to do some calculations 32 years ago. That's one thing. Well, maybe you can react to that before I go to the next thing.
Sure, certainly. And I think coming to it from an archival paradigm, I mean, a lot of people associate archivists with working with the past or being historic or historians, but actually it's very much a future-facing profession in terms of trying to anticipate what the requirements will be for the future. But fair enough, in terms of like the current context, I think all we can just say is perhaps a bit more collaboration between the disciplines. So in terms of if we can look, because we do have artists and media artists with a great deal of knowledge from their own works and how they've created them and how they've tried to preserve them. And then also, of course, from the archival side, a very rich body of digital preservation knowledge of standards and practices that we might sort of be a bit more in conversation, right? To try and work towards preserving current works as well, or ensuring that current works are at least, what we can mitigate, we can, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that you didn't solve my problem. and that's what you get because of course these are very valuable theories, both yours and the Byeongwon's, that help tremendously with the way we are going to handle things in the future. But if you're a practical archivist, my background is not in archiving at all. I'm just a simple sociologist. I have a problem there. What do I do now? Because when I go to I have a contact with with an institute, an educational institute that is active in the field of librarianship and archiving. Yet they can't help me because they're busy with the future, not with the past. I simplify it a bit, but we have these very practical problems. And how can we connect because we want to use the knowledge of librarians and experienced archivists and conservators, I don't know the right word, people who conserve museum art. We want to use the knowledge of those experts, but they're not connected, and we are not connected. And how do we get those connections?
Well, I think they can come from both sides. So I would say, just with my experience with the University of Windsor and the media arts program there, I mean, that was more, I would say, me reaching out to them. So as the archivist, kind of and as someone who did train as a media artist and as a video artist, understanding my own, I came through in the early 2000s, right? So I have mini DV tapes, I have, mini discs, I have all different kinds of media hardware, right? That, carrier sort of media that I can't access. So sort of being aware of that issue, I reached out to them, and there was a lot of excitement on their side, but they also about it because they recognize the same issues and problems. And so I think, and they had also approached the library before I had arrived there about this concern, right, around preserving their master's theses. And I think so a lot of people are aware of the issue. I mean, we're talking about them here. They're aware of the issues, but I think it's the urgency that is maybe missing. So understanding that as soon as something is created, it's already degrading, right? Or it's already, and especially now, right, as we see very rapid sort of developments and changes in the field, that it is sort of that importance again to think that as part of your artistic creation process, your artistic creative process, that archiving is a consideration within that, right? So trying to develop that sort of awareness, or develop that kind of future view as part of art practice.
Is it okay if I contact you after the summit to ask more?
Oh, I'll update my email because I'm not.
Before I go to Bonnie, there's a question from the audience. I want to ask Byeongwon something that triggered me from his presentation. First of all, very short, you talk about a long shot and a long take.
Yeah.
Of which is I understand what you mean when you want to document interactive art. A snapshot will not do. You need a long shot.
Mm.
But what's the difference between a long shot and a long take? And what is a long shot?
Yeah, I would like to talk about this theory from French theorist André Bazin, and he talked about, in one of his articles, he talked about to just document the realness. Filmmakers should use long take and long shot, and so when you just edit video clips or film, cut, and then we can manipulate the phenomena. And so I suggest that we can just document, film our interactive art projects without cuts, and just for a certain distance from the project, we can document it, and so we can reduce any exaggeration of the performance.
Okay, I think when we document an ongoing idea, like I try to do by taking screenshots this time because we're not physically together, I should start a grab video instead.
Yeah.
If I knew how to do that. One more thing before I go to Bonnie, and that's the thing you said about the audience, that it's necessary for the audience to completely understand the way the interactive work works. Did I understand that right? Because wouldn't you lose the magic of
Yeah,
the magic? You could step out of the magic
yeah.
circle, no?
Yeah, I like illusionism from interactive art, but my research is for especially not normal user, but researchers, scholars, and creators. But in this case, as a creator, I really want to know how it works with the specific technologies, and sometimes I found that some creators just did not fully informed their technology of the audience, not real audience, not but real contemporaries. And in this case, they can lie to creators
Yeah.
actually.
No,
Yeah,
okay. If you explain it like that, I fully agree.
yeah.
I don't agree that the audience has to understand everything.
Yeah,
Because if you start to watch a movie
yeah, 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 yeah.
and you pay attention to the way it's cut, the movie loses its magic, and you're not
Yeah,
interested in the movie anymore.
but, but in my opinion, I guess with several cuts, just like the film, I guess the documentation of interactive art is just beyond its original interactive art.
Yeah,
I
that's
get.
I
I
agree.
think it's a different genre of something else. I guess. Yeah.
Bonnie, you wanted.
Okay. The question from the audience is, and they do a disclaimer saying it is a general question, okay, but they wonder what kind of resources or tools do you think would be useful to create a more fluid dialogue between artists, conservators, curators, and archivists. And speaking from their limited experience, they think it would be challenging for everybody involved in these kind of processes to speak the same language, not literally, but our disciplines, we speak different languages, without erasing the specificity and value of everyone's experiences and expectations. Can you comment on that? What kind of a flow do we need to get all these people together, from students all the way up to the technicians, right, that are documenting the code that they put into this piece?
Well, I think, and I recognize certainly within my own presentation, and I apologize for this, using very much archival specific language, the notion of the record, which is specific to archives, as something, basically as something you would put aside for later keeping. So that might, obviously that would be an artist's own work, but it might also be documentation of their processes. It might be, background materials that they use to create the work, that kind of thing. But there's also so when we talk about metadata in the archival and library professions, there's this practice called crosswalking. And so if you're working with two different metadata standards, that you try to, sometimes it's not a great fit, but you try to jam together what analogous concepts exist. And I'm wondering if there is a way that we can look at crosswalking between disciplines and saying, you say tomato, I say tomato, but we actually are talking about the same thing, and to have that sort of bridging language, or that notion that these two, but I don't know with respect to the question if that exists already or if that needs to be created. And if anyone in the audience knows, please jump in.
Well, we actually have to wrap up.
Yeah, we have very limited time, but since we have a little break between this and the Zoom session, about which Bonnie will say something when we wrap up. There were some more questions came in. I don't think we have time to go into them and discuss them, but at least I want to notice them. It's Wendy says that what we're talking about is exactly the purpose of the summit, how to maintain the beauty of the multifarious stages while, it's jumping, I lose the track, while allowing us to collaborate globally. And Jill Scott is pointing to the fact that the documentation of the user experience is a difficult thing to do, that the electronic art world is struggling with this, but that on the other hand, science museums, or musea, like you should say, have experience with this, so that maybe we should collaborate with those, which I think is a very good suggestion.
Yeah.
And then Bonnie has also put something in the chat, but I'm not going to read that. The main thing is that the next session will be a discussion session with all the participants, people that have until now only been able to write chats, will be able to open their mouth finally, and it will even be possible for people who have not registered for IZEA 2020 to join in, although I'm not sure that I'm allowed to tell you that. The link to this Zoom meeting is in the chat, and sorry, there is also, next to the chat buttons, there is a button called questions, and then one called polls, or in my screen it's French apparently, sondage, and there you can choose the room that you want to go to, because once we are in the Zoom meeting, Bonnie will divide us over the 3 rooms where we have the 3 different discussions, one about getting the electronic art or digital art archives, getting them to cooperate on a large scale. The other one is how to connect these to the existing official art museum world. And the last one is about how the hell are we going to get some funding? And after we have those breakout sessions, which last 1.5 hours, we come back together in one room and we try to draw a number of conclusions and make an action plan for the future. So very important you join this and be part of the movement. Okay, Bonnie, can you tell us more?
No, I think we need to get going because we got some setup and we're 5 minutes past our time. So we hope to see you both in this discussion because you brought up some very interesting points.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Devon and Byeongwon, and thank you, Bonnie. See you in the
Thank you
Zoom
for having
room.
me. Okay, bye.
Okay.